A carpenter concentrating on his work, some newlyweds kneeling down, an angel with a flying baby Jesus above, a candle that has just been extinguished, and the Virgin Mary piously reading the Bible. This is the Annunciation triptych painted in the 1420s by Robert Campin and/or his workshop. It's filled with spectacular details, some of which we still have no clue what they represent, if anything, but many others have been interpreted after years of intense study. But before assessing all the details, let's start with the big picture. In the central panel is the Archangel Gabriel about to announce to the Virgin Mary that she will give birth to Jesus. On the left is a donor and his partner, seemingly witnessing this significant event, while Joseph, the fiancé of Mary, is unsuspecting and just concentrating on his craft. This triptych measures 65 by 118 centimeters or 25 by 46 inches, and it was made in the 1420s, and until that time, Annunciation scenes looked like this. They took place in some heavenly sphere with lots of gold in the background and large golden halos for Mary and the angel. But the Annunciation in our triptych takes place in the living room of some middle to upper class household. This was quite an innovation, and the reason for it was that before this painting, Annunciation scenes were commissioned by churches, but now, for the first time, wealthy citizens would commission such a work for their own living room, very much like the room we see at the center here. The purpose of the commission would be to serve as a home altar, where the owners could pray their Ave Maria, matching the words that the angel will say in his greeting to the Virgin, Hail Mary. And the idea of capturing this scene in the living room was in line with religious ideas in Northern Europe at that time, where one preacher said, "Let us imagine ourselves living in the same house as Christ and Mary." And in addition, this scene may have also reflected the couple's wish for their own children. This triptych is also known as the Mérode Triptych, named after the family who owned this work at some point in the 19th century. And before looking at each panel individually, notice the background in all three panels. On the left, it looks like spring, with birds and blooming rosebush and wildflowers in the foreground. This represents the time that the Annunciation reportedly took place around March 25. On the right, it is much colder, looking at the heavy clothes of the people outside, and it even seems a bit snowy. This refers to the time when Joseph would have been present, which is December 25, the birthday of Jesus. And at the center, who knows? Only part of the sky is shown, and the reason for that is that Mary and the angel are looking up to heaven. They represent the religious part of this painting, and in the side panels, scenes on earth are the focus. The angel is easy to perceive by its colorful wings, and it is also fairly straightforward to recognize Mary studying the Bible. The artist decided not to include halos to indicate their holiness, but there are plenty of other clues to indicate that these are two special people, beginning with their radiant garments, which are painted with way more care than those of the people on the side panels. And just notice how beautiful the artist captured all the folds in their garment, truly innovative and spectacular. As further evidence that we are dealing with the Annunciation story here is a tiny, naked figure with 7 golden rays approaching from the window in the direction of Mary. The figure is Jesus, and he is holding a cross, referring to his future crucifixion as the purpose of him being born. It is all situated in a room with a table, a long bench next to a fireplace and a half-open window. And looking at the props in the room, you may recognize various religious symbols. For starters, the white lilies, the white towel, and the water jug hanging on the wall are references to the purity of the Virgin Mary. And the half-closed windows refer to the idea that Mary lived a somewhat secluded life, focusing on God, and that also explains why there are no doors clearly visible in the room. And then Mary is not sitting on the bench, but on the floor, a reference to her humility, and she does not touch the Bible she is reading directly out of respect for the sacred book. By the way, these symbols are by no means new, as they had been used many times before and would have been recognized by common viewers. However, the recently extinguished candle is a bit of a mystery. Some say that it represents the presence of the Holy Spirit, who comes as a puff of wind. Another explanation I can come up with is that the angel extinguished it to get Mary's undivided attention from reading the Bible to listen to its Annunciation. Not sure if this makes sense, and I'm curious to hear if you have any thoughts about this. The kneeling man in the left panel must have been the commissioner of the painting. And while the precise identity of the man is subject of debate, the coats of arms on the windows at the central panel have led people to a particular family with the Dutch-sounding name Engelbrecht, which can be translated as the angel brings, and may be an explanation why they commissioned the work of the Annunciation by the angel, although this was a pretty popular subject anyway. Kneeling behind him is his wife or wife-to-be, depending on which member of the Engelbrecht family is depicted here. And then there is a curious element to this panel, which is the couple sitting in front of an open door, as if they're looking in at the scene in the next room. However, when we look at the room of Mary and the angel, there does not appear to be an open door. And this is where my interpretation differs a bit from most other people. I mentioned earlier that the room of Mary without doors is a reference to her living a relatively secluded life, focused on her religion. But if you look very carefully at the left side of the central panel, you may see a doorpost or an opening in the wall. I think that this is the entrance to Mary's room, but that the artist tried to only hint at it in a subtle way to make sure that both the donors could see what was happening, but Mary was also living her secluded and sacred life. Curious to hear if you agree with me. So Joseph has rarely been included in scenes of the Annunciation, simply because he was not present at that moment. But here he is, situated in a separate room, unaware of the significant events happening to Mary, just focusing on his craft as a carpenter. Joseph represents the common man, just doing his job in this world like most of us do. He is surrounded by his tools and holds a drill to create some holes in a wooden board. The reason he may have been included here is that this painting was probably commissioned by a wealthy merchant who would have a higher appreciation of craftsmen than the church would have had. An interesting element at this table is the wooden contraption at the center. It took people a while to figure out what it could be, but it turns out it is a mousetrap, and people who have reconstructed it have confirmed that this design actually works. Why a mousetrap? Who knows? There has been a lot of speculation about this element, and people have identified the contraption standing out of the window as an earlier model of a mousetrap. All the speculation about the trap led people to call this painting the Mousetrap Annunciation. But the name has not really stuck until today. But from all the things I read about it, nothing really convinced me why it is present here. But I'm curious to hear if you have any thoughts. Let me point out a few more little things about this painting. First, the linear perspective is not quite right everywhere, for example when looking at the table next to Joseph. But remember that in Italy, Brunelleschi had less than a decade earlier first written about linear perspective, and Campin or his workshop would not have known about this, but just used their fair judgment to capture some decent perspective. So it was quite good given that he never learned this properly. One other question that has kept people busy for a long time is what city is represented in the background. Looking at the architecture, it must have been based on places in current-day northern France or southern Belgium, but no one has made a truly convincing argument that it resembles one particular city. Finally, there's the question who painted this work. Nowadays, most people relate it to the style of Robert Campin, one of the earliest and most influential Northern Renaissance artists, together with artists like the Van Eyck brothers and Rogier van der Weyden. The latter one being a student of Campin, and some people have speculated that he has painted some small parts of this painting, as there have been different painting styles detected in this painting. So the general idea is that it may have been painted by Robert Campin and people from his workshop. Well, I hope you enjoyed this detailed analysis of an innovative triptych. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe buttons to support the channel, and I hope to welcome you in another video on my channel soon. Thanks for watching.